Welcome, everybody. A beautiful fall day in the Mojave Desert. I'm at my parents' orchard in Hesperia, California, and it's about 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. So I want to talk about pruning pears. Pears and apples are very similar. This is a southern king pear tree. Most of the leaves have fallen off. You don't want to prune until the tree is dormant. So we had a pretty good frost last night, got down to 28 degrees, and all the leaves have fallen off. The trees are definitely going to bed. So the best time again being late November into December. I like to get everything done before the New Year's because sometimes, especially in other parts of Southern California, things wake up early. Let's talk real quick about pears and apples. Pears and apples are very tough trees. They are one of the trees that you can prune even incorrectly and they will heal very well. Apples and pears, they can take a lot of heavy pruning and wind damage and still come back. That sets them apart from things like peaches and nectarines, which are very much the opposite. They're very weak trees and they do not take well to heavy pruning and their cuts don't heal well. Plums and other things are somewhere in the middle, but apples and pears, very easy to prune, very tough. Also, apples and pears bloom and set fruit on wood that is older, so second-year-old and older wood. So if we look at this tree here, you'll see these small spurs, if you will, and you can see how the consecutive growths, they don't grow very much, but these spurs are what grows the fruit. Now, these straighter branches, this would be last year's growth, doesn't really have those spurs. And that big bud on the tip will just be leaves. So again, as we look up this branch, you'll see these spurs. And those are fruiting spurs on older wood. This is a much older stem. Well, sorry, this tree is 3 years old. Okay, so the newer wood at the top does not have spurs, just the older wood. And if I take you to another pear, this one is a very small Kiefer pear. It doesn't really need any pruning because it's too small. But I can also show you here. That's a spur. So fruit will produce off of those. So the first thing I'm going to do, looking at this pear tree, is look for branches that are crossing. So right here in the middle, hopefully you could see this, stemming from down here is this sucker branch that will basically is one, filling in this crown, but two, it's crossing this lovely group of spurs here. So getting rid of this young wood that's vigorous, here's another one right here, is really good. That's going to, one, open up my crown, and two, redistribute that energy. So here's another one. This one's just kind of going inside. I want to get rid of that. It doesn't have the right growth habit for it to produce lots of fruit. Here's another crossing branch. This branch I don't like. I'd rather actually keep this smaller branch. So I'll take away this older branch, and there is no spur here, so I'm going to take that all the way back. And this tree has not been pruned. I'm going to take away this piece here because it is small and very much not really that great. Now, remember, keep your pruners clean. Here's another one that's kind of branching out into the center. So I'm going to clean this with alcohol between all the prunings. Now, right now, the prunings are just falling to the ground. I will pick those up a little bit later. So again, I'm identifying some young growth that's basically heading back into the crown. I don't want the crown, this center part. I want to keep this open so that there's space between these branches. Again, so look at here. This sprout heading out, crossing into this. This is the branch here. It's crossing into all those. So I'm going to get rid of all that. I'll do this one as well. This is for good measure. So I'm continuing looking for any, also dead wood, but crossing is a big one. Here's another issue over here. So I have this nice fruiting piece of wood. Look at all those spurs coming in, and then this younger piece intercepting. So if I follow this younger piece, there's some spurs here and downwards. I'm just going to take it right to where I see those spurs, and that will put energy into those fruiting spurs. Now, this tree is in partial shade. It's on the north side of a greenhouse, so it hasn't had its trunk painted white for sunscreen, but I will be painting the rest of the orchard white soon after I prune these. Now I'm just getting rid of some dead pieces. Also back here, nice group of spurs, but then I have this young shoot right here. I don't really need that. I don't really need that young shoot going back there, or this shoot here coming right out of there. So I just want to keep all these nubbies full of spurs. Hopefully you can see those spurs on the end of those. So I'm going to continue up. Now I'm going to go up into the crown of the tree. We have lots of new growth. Look at all this new growth that occurred this past year. So I don't want this tree to grow really high. I also want it to grow away from this greenhouse. So I'm going to take away a lot of this new growth. I'm going to take away this piece because it's growing kind of in and around those guys there. There's a dead piece. I'll also take away this piece because it's growing back into the crown. And I'm going to now thin out some of this new growth. So I have to decide between this branch and this branch, this cluster here versus this branch here. This branch here is younger, not going to give me fruit. This is a much older branch, and it has multi-age twigs, so we're going to keep that one, but we're going to shorten it. So we're going to take this piece off. Let me get in position so you can see me cutting. So we shorten it. We're also going to shorten this big, long, tall leader. I think I'm going to take that guy off pretty much all the way down. And what's going to happen now is I'm going to get new energy into these side shoots, and hopefully get more spur production here, and also into these spurs. Again, I don't want this tree very tall. And I have beautiful spur clusters down in here, right here. Now, for example, this new growth here is fine because it's growing towards a direction that I think is nice. It's growing out away from the center versus like this little one here, which is growing inwards. I'm just going to cut it here. Get rid of some of this. Oops. Get rid of some of the extremely vigorous new growth. Hold that still. And now again, this younger growth will come back and will be more invigorated. I'm just going to make a cleaner cut there. All right, let me finish off this branch here. Again, this is facing inwards. I don't like that. I don't need this extra height that just goes up and up and up and up. And then I'm going to shorten this leader. I like this bud facing that way. So wherever you cut, that bud's going to grow out that way. Then typically we'd open this tree up more, but I'm in the desert, so it does better if we have some shade on the fruit. So I'm leaving this central branch. But I am going to shorten it. I'm just going to literally cut it, top it right up here. And that's going to allow these spurs to grow, and I might get some more centrals. But I do want to keep, even though I want it open, I don't want it too open because then we'll get sunburn on the pears. And that has happened this year. Again, I'm just going to shorten up some of these branches. Sorry. Shorten up this branch here. Almost done with this tree. Let's do this branch here, a lovely branch full of spurs. All I really need to do is get rid of this complex right here of young non-woody growth. This will take over. Then I have one last branch. I have this guy back here. And I'm going to prune right up in here to get rid of these two tall guys. I'm going to prune right at the top. And again, going to allow the energy to go back down the tree. So this pear tree is pretty much done for its first pruning. Not taking off too much. Again, because it's only a 3-year-old tree. Right, I'm going to keep it relatively light for the pruning. I could do a heavier pruning. I do see a potential issue here with this branch growing up here, so I'm just going to cut that back down. And I pretty much tipped the tips here of all the leaders, taking the tips out for the most part. And again, that is going to promote more branching. Here I'm going to do that again, and I'm again deciding to prune there because there's a branch growing out that direction. Up here I'll tip this right here, and there's a bud growing towards me, which is nice, away from the center. Pretty much I don't want much growth growing into the center. I want it growing outwards. But there's a pear tree. Pretty easy. This little guy, my fruit tree orchard, got hit by a windstorm last year, and it broke the top off of this pear. This is a kefir. Completely broke the top off of this apple. In fact, this is rootstock. And I will be grafting different varieties onto that. And it actually broke, it actually killed, if we go on to the other side of the orchard here, it killed this tree. This was a Flavor Queen Pluot. So we'll be replacing these trees. So again, remember, staking trees is a good idea. Keeping those trees staked. All right, I will stop here and we'll do part 2, which will be a peach.